everybody. Is it on? Good afternoon, everybody. Can I get everyone's attention, please? My, my name is Leah Eustace. I'm a board member with the AFP Foundation for Philanthropy Canada. Very pleased to welcome you all here. We're starting promptly because, as some of you may have noticed, we have some cameras and equipment at the back. This session is being live webcast. This is offered for free to the more than 200 people who have signed up. So we have 200 people online joining us today, which is fantastic. I'll be monitoring that portion of the session and bringing forward questions and so on from that group. Thanks to the foundation for the funding to provide this webcast. I'd like to introduce Tracey Bailey, our speaker today. Tracey is with the Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital Foundation, and she has been in this business for a long time, a huge amount of experience. She's been fundraising for more than 25 years, writing professionally for over 30 years, and as communications specialist, she has experience in public, government, and community relations, marketing, sponsorship, and fundraising communications. It goes on and on. Tracey rejoined Holland Bloorview in March 2010 and was appointed president and CEO in May of 2012, May of this year. So welcome, Tracey. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us about donors and communicating with donors, and I look forward to an engaging session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Leah. Can everybody hear me okay in the room? And I'm assuming everything is working out there in the big wide world. Welcome to those of you who are not in the room but joining us from across the country. This is only slightly intimidating. And so I'm going to rely on all of the good vibes in the room to sort of help us get through the next hour and a half when we're trying to engage you here and everybody out in their organizations. Because we are broadcasting and taping this session, we're going to change. We won't have a formal Q&A at the end of the session. I do want you to feel comfortable asking questions, but you can ask them from your seat. I'll make sure I repeat the question so everyone hears it, and we'll go from there with the overall presentation. If you have really specific questions, please don't hesitate to come and see me at the end of the session, because we have about a half an hour between sessions. Happy to take your questions then. And of course, I've got my business card up here, or you're all a room full of really smart people. I don't think it'd be hard for you to find me. And reach out, phone, email. This is a business that's very personal, so I'm happy to take your questions. I want to start the session with a couple of disclaimers. So this presentation has been prepared for the beginner's track. And when I'm working on a presentation for the beginner's track, I invariably put a ton of information in the PowerPoint slides because I know people like to take it back to the office and have it as kind of a how-to manual. That means we won't cover all the slides in the presentation. But I really want you to take the information that's there and talk to people in your organization. Get them to help you understand and practice some of the things we're going to talk about today. So we're going to try to stay pretty high level. Typically, I would do this presentation for fundraisers and for communicators. So we got fundraisers and communicators in the room today. I want to try to give you both something to take away. So how many people are fundraisers in the room? Okay, lots of fundraisers. How many people are communicators? Okay. So there's good information for both of you together, and a lot of it is common sense, and a lot of it crosses both of those boundaries. So let me start by asking you a question. What is the ultimate goal of all forms of communication? In-person communication, publications, every way we communicate. What is the purpose of all this communication in the nonprofit sector, in the fundraising environment? Yes. To get your message across. Right. Ultimately, what do we want to achieve? What's the end result of all our communications? Yeah, absolutely. Strong relationships. Get money for your cause. All of what you said is absolutely true, but don't lose focus. Keep your eye on the objective. The objective is to raise money. Even you communicators have a big role to play. So let's talk about what that looks like. Now, asking for money. So both of you, fundraisers and communicators, you're part of building a relationship. Everyone builds relationships. Major gift professionals, annual giving, officers, you are all responsible directly maybe for hundreds of relationships, making those relationships more personal. Communicators, you are responsible for the way the organization communicates to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, right? You think of them as your audience. I need us to change our language a little bit, and I'm going to speak about that in a minute. So, if we're in the relationship building business, what are some things we understand? People give to people to help people. Trust is the heart of the matter. If our ultimate goal is for people to make gifts to our organization, they will make that gift because they trust that we are going to do what we say we are going to do with their money. We make a promise to them on the delivery of the mission. They trust us, they will give us money. They trust us more, they will give us more money. They will make us a top priority. They will give to us year after year. They will give to us unrestricted because they're going to say, we trust you. Do what you need to do with that money. And communication, as you all know, because you are all in relationships, the communication underpins healthy relationships. This is what we want to have with our donors. This is what we want to have with our children, with our parents, with our spouses, with the members of our team. So how do we get down to a level of communicating with people so all of those relationships are healthy? And we have 10,000 healthy relationships with our donors and our friends. So I position for you that communications, all of us need to be thinking about communications as a conversation. Right? I need you to get out of presentation mode. I'm telling you, you need to prepare for the conversation you're going to have with donors in whatever form possible. But in preparing, typically we go into presentation mode and we want to show up with a package of information. We want to show up with a PowerPoint built specifically for that individual. And that's not very personal. Right? We want you to stop doing all the talking. Our publications are one-way conversations typically. It would be great if we could all spend the time and energy required to do social media really well, because those are actually more authentic, engaging kind of conversations with people. We'll speak about that. I want you to think hard about whether, when you are in conversations with donors, in person, on the phone, Facebook, Twitter, through your publications, are you listening with your ears, your eyes, and your heart? We're going to talk about active listening today. Hopefully we have some time. When you're starting a conversation with someone who is new to you, think of the conversation as broad and wide-ranging. It's way out here. It's very general. And what your job is to get that to spiral down to something that's deeper and more meaningful. So how do you do that over time? How do you have conversations that start at the 50,000-foot level? What do you think of the weather today? How are you? What's going on in your life? Why did you give this gift to us? I'm really curious about that. And how do you get down to what really matters to you and this donor who is giving to your organization? Communicators. If you are sitting at your desk writing, it will not be personal enough unless you are spending time with donors, with clients, with board members, with other volunteers in the organization. So how are you going to get away from your desk? Yeah, I know, you have to get your work done, but how do you get away from your desk and get out there to be with your colleagues as they're meeting and greeting people? Because those conversations you start having with donors will influence story choices, testimonials that you have, the language that people need to hear that is more personal. So are you attending events? And not to sit behind reception to hand out the name tags, but actually, meeting people and chatting with them and telling them about your job and finding out what they're passionate about inside the organization. In your organizations, are you part of the phone campaigns to thank donors for their gifts? Because you'll feel really good when you make thank you phone calls. And the way you thank people in person and their response to that starts to change the way you write, the annual direct mail appeal thank you letter, for example, if that's one of your responsibilities. There's no reason why, if you can do tours in your organization or people come in to visit, that you can't be a part of that. The fundraiser isn't the only one who is in the relationship with the donor. You are both represent the organization, and you should take the opportunity to get out and be with people and hear clients talk about the impact the organization has had on their lives. Don't assume that, just some phone calls that you have. Maybe you're doing interviews with people as part of stories that you want to tell in your annual report. Are you asking the right questions to get at that more personal information? If the person doesn't really know you, but you're responsible for doing the interview, there's going to be a difference in the quality of information and the detail that they provide to you, the really substantive, meaty, emotional information that they'll provide, which of course you want to share with your wider audience. But they need to know you. So how are you going to make that happen? Start with where you are in the relationship. Some people have been donors to your organization for a very long time. They have a very personal relationship with the organization, and maybe you're new. So where are they? What is the relationship with that individual? And then how are you going to join that journey? Start with something as easy as, what do you have in common? If you don't know the individual who has been giving to your organization, but you have something in common with them, what is it? The organization, the vision, the mission of the organization. That's your starting place. That's what you talk about. So, are you starting the conversation? Are you keeping the conversation going? Have you come to a point in the conversation? Because let's face it, once we start to do this a lot, we get really comfortable being in the conversation. But again, what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to ask for the gift. At some point, you have to ask for the gift. So, what are you doing to move that forward in an authentic way? The conversation, the conversation is getting deeper because you've gotten by the how many kids do you have and where did you go to school, to things like, what do you want to accomplish in your life? What have you accomplished in your life? What do you want your legacy to be? When you start having those kinds of conversations with donors, the trust is there, the communication is healthy, and they are ready for more, and of course you are ready for more, and we have to talk about what that is. So, how personal are we talking here? This is where we start to get into the discomfort that all of us have. No matter how long you've been fundraising, and I've been fundraising for 26 years, this is not easy stuff. But you need to develop your emotional intelligence, so we're going to ask some tough questions. How personal? So I was doing this session years ago in the university, and one of the participants said she had attended a session 20 years before, so we're going on 30 years now, when she was at a session and a Harvard guy, see, don't know the Harvard guy's name, but we all listen because it's a guy from Harvard, and they know how to fundraise, and he said to the whole room, write love letters to your donors. Love letters. So I write a lot of letters. I'm pretty good at thanking donors. I'm pretty good at making them personal. And at that point in time, I'm pretty sure I hadn't written a love letter to a donor. And I have been trying ever since to write love letters to donors. Not just to one donor at a time, but to 1,000 of our donors, so that they feel that that letter was written for them, and they know I love them, and the organization loves them. How do, I don't know, some of you may do stewardship. How do our donors know that we love them unless we tell them we love them? Okay, maybe you're not using the L word all the time, but how do you give them that sort of metaphorical hug in writing or in those conversations? But I'll also tell you that you can actually use the word love. Believe it or not, you can use the word love when you're talking to bankers, and I can prove it. So last night, we had our signature event at the hospital, and the room is full of our best friends in the whole wide world. And so I'm systematically kind of going through the room and thanking everybody as individually as I can for being there. Personal, small thing to do. It was a pretty small room, 25 tables, I think. My staff is sitting back at the office going, she doesn't even know how many tables were in the room. See the detail the president doesn't have. But I wanted to say thank you to everyone and feel like they were personally thanked. So we come to the part of the program where all 5 banks are in the room. You can't play favorites, right, with the banks. So I say, I'm so pleased that the 5 major banks are here: Scotiabank, RBC, BMO, CIBC, TD. At the risk of sounding like I'm playing favorites, I'm not. I love all of you equally. See, the word love. And none of them scoffed at the use of the word love in that context. Plus, I have a great relationship with a lot of the people that were sitting at the table, and they know I was genuine in using that word love, right? So I love you all equally, but I simply must acknowledge the leadership of David Allgood from RBC, who is the chair of the hospital's Board of Trustees. So in context, you can use those words. They are authentic, but you have to work hard every day to figure out how you show your donors that you love them. And we do this in writing, and we do this in person. So the importance of this is that we know that if we can elicit an emotional response, the reason to get personal, is that this will trigger gifts. So what kind of emotions are we talking about? So a great book that gets into this, by the way, is by Tom Ahern and Simone Joyeux. It's called Keep Your Donors. Someone told me it's not available in print anymore, which makes me crazy because it's like the best book. Every communicator should have this book, and fundraiser. So they talk about emotional triggers. What triggers, you know, what emotions are we tapping into, right? We're tapping into love, joy, surprise. These are some of the key ones. Hope, right? Faith and duty, sometimes anger and fear and sadness, right? So you have to be prepared both to make an emotional investment, and you're a professional, so that has to be carefully managed. You have to be ready to receive an emotional response that might be quite chaotic, you know, as you deepen that relationship. So you're going to be working really hard to build up your emotional intelligence over time. So you're not going to dive right into the deep end with, you know, the top donor in the organization who's very attached and very passionate, and try to have that one-on-one conversation with them, like to connect at that deep emotional level. You're not going to start there. You're going to start, you know, again, broadly and kind of work your way in. Because you really do. There is a right balance between personal and professional here, and you are the professional, and you definitely have to balance it. So I want to give you an example of someone who does this extremely well. A couple of examples. So Jane George is a good friend. She lives and works out in Hamilton for an organization called Wellwood. It's a cancer support organization. Jane's background is communications, and she's the executive director of this small organization because she has a very personal connection to cancer in her family. And so she left a career in communications to work alongside community organizers in this area. So, but she's a communicator, and she knows how to connect with people. So I'm going to read you from a couple of letters that she's written. One that was on the front page of her newsletter, right, built right into the newsletter, and another one that was a cover letter that came with the newsletter, right? So those of you who were in this business back in 2008, when the market was crashing, when nobody was making donations, when we were worrying about our endowments, and we didn't know if anybody would ever make a gift to our organizations, that was a crazy-making time for all of us. Some organizations had the inclination, well, we just won't bother our donors because of what they're going through. And then other of us realized this was the perfect opportunity, if we actually had a good, solid, healthy relationship with people, to really be communicating with them, finding out how they were doing, and you know, letting them know we were there, also letting them know the organization was going to survive. We were still going to be here. We were all going to come through this together. So this was the way Jane approached this. According to Peter Mansbridge, I have the worst job in the world right now. She goes on to talk about a CBC clip that was talking about, imagine being the executive director of a charity about right now. So, of course, her immediate reaction to that was panic, which she admits to in this letter to her donors. And then she goes on to talk about these are difficult times. Here's what we're going on. She acknowledges right down here in the bottom of the letter, Wellwood will be. She's reinforcing the fact that through thick and thin, the organization is going to continue to be there. And then she gets increasingly more personal. But I think you'll see a balance between personal and professional here. Yes, these are difficult times, but everyone who walks through our doors knows about difficult times. All of you know how devastating the cancer journey is for patients and those closest to them. It can be a shattering time, emotionally, financially, and professionally, and can be overwhelming, confusing, and isolating. Okay, I can never read this without getting choked up. So, cancer doesn't care if times are tight. Cancer doesn't care if stocks have crashed or that you have lost your job. Cancer will come calling, whether it is convenient time or not. Every day I have a remarkable privilege of walking with someone on their cancer journey. Every day I work with an incredible team of volunteers and staff who reach into their own pain or loss and somehow find a way to use their wisdom and experience to help someone else. Every day I meet a hero. The work that we do here is meaningful. It makes a difference. And my children are proud of what I do for a living. So to me, recession or no, Peter has got it wrong. I have the best job imaginable. Thank you for the honor of working with you. So how many people think they know Jane George now? How many people want to give her a gift? All right. So that was a couple of years ago. I keep track of these things. And then this is what came in June. I am often asked why I choose to do such emotionally intense work. As is the case with most people who volunteer at Wellwood, this wonderful place allows me to find meaning in my own journey. I always say that I needed Wellwood much more than Wellwood needed me. Why do I work here? So Jane goes on, but I'm going to shorten this. Why do I work here? I do it for the people you love and for the people I love who will someday be diagnosed. So, what is it about this kind of correspondence with valued donors and partners and volunteers is resonating personally? What are some of the things Jane is doing? I'm sure she's doing most of them intuitively. She hasn't really thought about it from a professional domain. What are some of the things that she is doing in this letter that make it personal, that make you connect to it? What are some of the things? Yes? Right. Like letting her emotions show and be part of this conversation. What else is she doing? Yes? Sincerity, authenticity, it right down to the word choices. Absolutely, yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. A couple of other things. She is using the word you and I. She's almost never doing the we. You and I is very powerful. I want to read you something else that I heard years ago and went and found on the web about 30 seconds after the guy said it. And the best example of you and I to now a wide audience, right? And speaking. So this was on the occasion of Andre Agassi retiring from tennis. And he had just lost a game, and then they said, would you like to say something? And so he said, the scoreboard said I lost today, but what the scoreboard doesn't say is what I have found. Over the last 21 years, I have found loyalty. You have pulled for me on the court, and also in life. I've found inspiration. You have willed me to succeed, sometimes in my lowest moments. And I have found generosity. You have given me your shoulders to stand on, to reach for my dreams, dreams I could have never reached without you. Over the last 21 years, I have found you. And I will take you and the memory of you with me for the rest of my life. You and I. And I bet everybody in that stadium felt he was talking to them. So how do we get more you and I in our written correspondence? So, 10 tips over the 2 slides. When you're writing, think happy thoughts. How are we doing on time over here, Megan? All right. We're going to think happy thoughts. If you are happy, you write from a place that's really positive. You make different word choices. Maybe there's a time of day when you're really happy. You know, you're happier in the morning than you are late in the afternoon, because if you've had a particularly tough day, it's hard to kind of switch out of, you know, the mundane or the challenging or the toughness of something. But you've got to get to that place because it comes through in the written word. Always take the opportunity to thank people. You've got lots of reason to thank them. You're thanking them for the gift. You're thanking them for their time. You're thanking them for reaching out to you. So you get the donor who calls you and he is very upset about something stupid that you have done. Thank you for calling me and letting me know. I can't fix it if I don't hear from you. I'm really glad you called. How are you going to show emotion? How are you going to tap into emotion? We connect with people through our feelings. You shouldn't be afraid to do this in writing. You have to be careful about how you do this. You have to experiment. You have to check in. I mean, everybody needs to have someone who's an editor and a sounding board to check on this. I edit a lot of stuff for people and they say, I think this is too cheesy. I think this is too much. Typically, if you think it's too much, it's probably just hitting the right note. But sometimes it is too much. And you need your editor to tell you, yikes, it's gone a little far here, right? You were overly zealous. And chances are, all you have to do to fix that is take some stuff out. Not go away, rewrite the whole thing. Like, there might be just a few things that you would take out that would allow that letter to be more balanced. Same with preparing for conversations you want to have with donors, right? You must practice. Practice on each other at work. Practice on your spouse. My spouse is, has been there to be a sounding board, and he knows me really well, right? He knows when I'm being Tracey Bailey and when I've just gone way too far. And he's going to give me good feedback. Always remember to start at the reader start line or the listener start line. Because again, you prepare for the conversation, it's spinning through your mind, and you walk into the room and boom, you're hitting them right between the eyes with it. Or they're getting the letter and it's really hard hitting. Right? Ease into that conversation. They didn't prepare for the conversation the way you did. Right? All right. Some more tips. Some of you are in the position where you are writing for other members of your team. So what do you know about their voice? if you spend enough time with them, what words do they like? My team knows they can put the word thrilled in any letter I am sending to a donor, because I am frequently thrilled, right? That's one of my words. Right? So what are the words? Because the word choice is very important. Helps contribute to the authenticity. All right. In this correspondence, regular correspondence that you have with donors, there will be no bold, italic, underlined, or highlighted copy. You will not indiscriminately use quotation marks. You don't like talking to the person in the room who's going, that thing that we all do. You don't like that, right? So why would you like it when you're, if you're thinking about this as a conversation, why do you want to see these quotation marks around words? You don't need them. You really don't. So bold to me would be shouting at somebody. You're underlining something, it's like, what, they just need me to read the underlined stuff and I don't have to care about the other stuff? That's what I go to. Don't you go to? Just the highlighted copy? Because it must be the most important stuff. But if you're in a conversation, you want to get to a right level of emotion, you need them to read the whole thing. So, how, constantly the battle to stay away from jargon and buzzwords and business phrases. Now, business phrases. Many of us have taken kind of business writing courses. So basically now, if you're going to be in the relationship business, you're going to forget everything you learned in a business writing course, because that is not our language. Commercials. What do you think I mean by commercials in a written document? Commercials? Anybody? Yeah, that paragraph that always sneaks into, usually paragraph number 3, where you started out, John, it was so great to see you last night, and I'm so glad you want to bring so-and-so in for a tour to Canada's largest pediatric children's hospital. Okay, the first time we met John and we told him we were the largest children's pediatric hospital, he got it. We don't have to remind him every time we send him a letter, really, but we do it. And you can go back to my office and there will be all kinds of stuff that has, the commercial interruption on it. It's a battle against that, but it's not personal. And quite frankly, here's what I've learned, because I've interviewed a lot of donors about what they like to receive from organizations and not, and they read, right? And here's what I've learned about them. I'm reading about me, I'm reading about me, I'm reading about me, I'm reading about you. You personally, they're still reading because they like you. And then I'm reading about, the organization generally, I'm not reading anymore. And we tend to also, in our writing, we're working down to something, except we bury the lead every time. You put all the good stuff at the bottom. So don't build up to it. Most people don't have time. Put it in the first paragraph. And it says here, say only what needs to be said. So your whole correspondence with that individual could be one paragraph. And when I say that, it's fewer words have more impact. All the writers in the room know that. Right? But the other thing is you are dealing with very busy people now. There isn't anybody who is in your life who isn't too busy. So if, I don't know about other people, I open my mail on Saturday mornings, because I don't have time to open mail during the week, and I open it up, and if it's more than a page, I put it aside to read later. It gets to the bottom of the pile. I might never get around to reading it. If it's a couple of paragraphs, I can make time for a couple of paragraphs, and I read it. So say less. The other important thing about writing personally is to read it out loud. So you read it out loud, you see where there are lots of extra words, you can take those words out. You're tripping over the pronunciation of neuro-rehabilitation, and you change that to brain science for kids with disabilities. If you're reading a sentence and you have to take a great big breath in the middle of it, the sentence is too long, it can be a couple of sentences, or figure out what absolutely needs to be said. All right, pretty common sense right now. So when we're looking at written correspondence, because what I really want to get down here today to talking about is you individually writing more letters, notes, I want you to stay away from email. I want you to really try hard. I mean, there are some people who only communicate through email, but you've got to, quite frankly, get back to the letters and correspondence. So all of these are the standard kind of letters in our office. And if you're going to get really good at this, you need to take some of those standard letters and just start applying those first 10 rules. Figure out how to make them simpler. So, of course, I go to my genius gift processing team of one, Natasha, and I say to her, okay, Natasha, I need a bunch of letters because I want to give you some samples. We're really good at this, right? Because I teach courses about this. So we must do a really great job of writing personal letters, but that go out to a lot of our donors. So, of course, I come to the first one, and it says, I told you, use you and I. I'm giving you that advice. I need to take that advice, too. Why can't your sort of general thank you letter say, I am so grateful for your gift? Right? Because I'm going to sign it. I mean, the we isn't going to sign it. It's not going to be signed by Tracey and Yvonne and Nicole and 5 other people in the office. If those 5 other people were involved in us getting this gift, they're going to send their own little notes because this individual may have relationships with lots of people. But I am sending this letter. My name is down here. It should come from me. It should say I. And it should have you. At least I've got that part right in a lot of these letters. Today, because of you, a child with a disability is discovering they live in a world with infinite possibilities. Because of you, getting down to that kind of change. So a first step at is going back to these letters that exist in your office and starting to make those changes to them. In your publications, again, you and I, very powerful. Right? So here's the cover of our annual report from a couple of years ago. The title is Better Care Thanks to You. Inside, another title on the story is Look What You Have Done. And in a very simple way, although our annual report goes to thousands of people, those individuals, I hope, are starting to feel like I am speaking to you. This is me. And then it can be on your newsletter. So I did the same thing with the newsletters in the office to make sure that I was doing the you and I thing. Your family needs you. Right? So at Holland Bloorview, we talk about being one big family, and we help each other. Because we want our donors to be personally involved in the organization, to have a really good experience of the promises that we make to people. So we've made them part of our family, and we want them to make sure they're having those really great experiences. Because not everybody's going to come for the tour, but they have to live it through the stories that we tell them. So all of these things could be more personal. Why do we send out event invitations that say, please join us for the best donor reception in the city? Actually, that's pretty good. Like, can we keep that? Can somebody write that down? I want to use that. But why do we just say, please join us? Why can't that invitation come from me, come from your president, come from you? I hope that you can come to this reception so we can thank you in person for all that you've done for us this year. Date, time, place, attire. Please tell us about your allergies. But the only thing that's personal on there is please tell us about your allergies. So how can we make even the event invitations more personal? Same with the brochures. Okay. So go back and just start with you and I. Don't try to change the world overnight. Start with you and I. Bonus tip. Nothing beats the handwritten note. Nothing. People call and say, I haven't received a handwritten note in years. Are you writing handwritten notes? Lots. Give yourself writer's cramp. Again, you're not writing a book. You're not filling up all the white space on the inside of the card. I'm thinking of you. Really grateful. Or there might be something specific, but more handwritten notes. to reinforce that personal connection that you have. Be top of mind with your organization. All right, let's have a conversation then about making it personal. So we've talked about some of the highlights of writing and being more authentic. Let's talk about the phone. So here's the thing. You should be making, I'm going to say, 5 to 10 times as many phone calls as sending out letters. Anybody doing 5 or 10 times as many phone calls? Fabulous. All right. This is a lost art. So if you are actually really on the beginner's track and starting out in this business, then you would be well served to use the phone a lot. It's hard to pick up the phone. It's hard to get people to answer their phone. But it's absolutely critical because, quite frankly, if we want more of a personal connection, if we want to start a two-way conversation, because most of it, mail we send out, publications we send out one way, right? And that's a very transactional arrangement, not personal. We want to get more personal. It means we have to at least have a two-way dialogue. Some people feel comfortable doing this by email, but it shows that you are trying hard when you pick up the phone to call. Okay, so you're going to get voicemail a lot. What kind of voicemail message do you leave? Short and sweet. Okay, let's break that down. What do you say? Right? So your whole name, the title, the organization you're with, what do you do? What part of that do you do? All right. Is that pretty much what people are doing? What are other people doing? Can you speak up? Sorry. Right. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So none of what we've talked about here is wrong, right? That you leave your name and your title and your phone number, and or that you leave it somewhat open-ended so that the person may know you're calling them back. If you're calling someone for the first time, you haven't really talked to them before, you might want to start by saying, "Hi, it's Tracey from Holland Bloorview." They don't care whether I'm the president or not. They're not going to remember all of that. If I say Tracey Bailey, President and CEO of Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital Foundation, they have missed the most important thing, which is Tracey called them from Holland Bloorview. So sometimes I'll just say, well, I say Holland Bloorview. It's Tracey calling from Holland Bloorview. I'm sorry we didn't connect. I'm calling to say thank you for your support. And I really hope you're having a wonderful day. Now, actually, I was kind of businesslike about that. So I got a tone, inflection, voice, very important. I'm sitting up at my desk. I'm sitting back, so my body language is open, so the energy can flow. And now I'm going to say, "Hi, it's Tracey. I'm sorry I didn't reach you. I was calling to say thank you. I really hope you're having a wonderful day." What does that do for the person who's getting that message at, say, 5:30? They've walked in the door from work. They've had a terrible subway ride. And they're checking voicemail messages if it was home or office. What does that do for them? Right. Right. I don't sound like a telemarketer. I don't sound like a vendor of some kind. I don't want something from you. I wanted to say hello. I really hope you're having a wonderful day. Don't we all want people who give to our organizations to have a wonderful day? Switch it up for yourself. You know, what kind of message would you leave? Would that person be more likely to actually pick up the phone the next time you called? because you left that kind of a message, especially if it's kind of the first call. We do thank you calls, right? And people say to us, you know, we're calling to say, you know, thank you. And people go, is that it? And you really should resist the temptation to say, oh, no, well, if you want to talk about our campaign priorities. Right? If it was a thank you call, say thank you. And trust that there will be another conversation with that individual. Sometimes if you've had a couple of calls or the person seems to be engaged, you can tell when somebody's really rushed on the phone. You can tell when they're rushed and they really haven't got time to talk to you versus, no, I'm genuinely interested. Is that all you really wanted to talk about? Well, if you've got the time, I'd like to tell you about some exciting things that are going on here. You know, so you can do that as well. But really, how are we going to get to, we have 4,000 active donors at Holland Bloorview. I'd like to talk to every one of them at least once a year. Or, even if it's a one-way communication, have them feel like, gee, it was almost like we were having a conversation there. I want to make those connections. And if everybody on our team isn't committing to making phone calls, making phone calls. And quite frankly, the more phone calls you make, the more success you'll have at actually connecting with people. And then they will want to meet with you in person. That's the biggest complaint, right? Fundraisers in the room, nobody wants to talk to them, nobody wants to meet with them. Okay, we're going to get into that kind of thing. But, so, make good choices about the time of day you call if you authentically want to connect with people. Don't be those people that call at 6 o'clock at night just because you know they're going to get a voicemail, and you can leave this very nice voicemail message, because what does that read to the donor or person you're trying to reach? Cop out. Didn't really want to talk to me, maybe. You know, so don't get, they weren't thinking about you before. Don't have them thinking about you in a bit of a negative way. You know, try to connect with them. Is it better to talk to this person at home or in the office? Like, ask these questions. Do you want to talk to the husband or the wife? Do you want to talk to both of them? Talk to both of them if you can. Okay. So leave the right voicemail messages. Go back to the office and think about some of these scripts. Write different ones for different occasions. Okay. Check the tone of your voice. Practice. So when do you sound too businesslike? How do you get more inflection in your voice to make it more personal? Your body language on the phone is probably the most important thing, or the thing we do wrong, right? So here you are. Hello. So you've got this whole crouch thing going on. It's not in your voice. Sit back in your chair. Stand up better. Stand up when you're making your phone calls. Energy flows better. It's very positive. You drive your roommates crazy. Most of you have roommates, right? Because we're nonprofit organizations. We don't have enough space. We're living with each other, living on top of each other. You have to work that out. But your body language is important. And mind your manners. So if you haven't checked, you know, your mother isn't still reminding you about holding your shoulders back and not dragging your feet and being polite and calling people by, you know, Mr. or Mrs. until you're invited to call them by their first name. There's another thing I can't stress enough. I'm still doing it. 25 years later, it was a very good piece of advice from Sister Maristella, and I still don't, you know, until I have the relationship or been invited to a relationship with someone, I still won't use their first name until invited to do so. People appreciate courtesy, respect, and, you know, they will. It'll get their attention. So go online, Google good manners. Remind yourself what they are. You particularly need them. There's phone etiquette. I can't remember what all of it is, but there is. So check in with that stuff if you haven't done that in a while. So watch the kind of time. What kind of time are you really asking for here? Most conversations should be less than 5 minutes long. Anybody else have different experiences there? We can talk about it. If you are directing the call and managing the call, so you tend to be leading the conversation and you're getting, at the beginning, one-word answers from people until you say something that triggers, that will be a trigger for the individual to engage more in that conversation. But if you're controlling it less than 5 minutes, and if you get somebody on the phone who wants to talk for an hour, you're going to be on the phone for an hour. And people will usually acknowledge at the end of that call, geez, I've taken a lot of your time. I'm really sorry, but I feel, you know, I'm really glad you called. Great starting place. And while you're on the phone, do not be trying to tweet, check Facebook, check your email, sign letters to other donors. This is not a good place to multitask because that means you are not listening. And if you're not listening, you're not hearing, picking up on the cues, picking up on what the donor is asking you, what they're telling you. You're not being strategic about your part of the conversation. Right? Try to minimize the note-taking during phone calls. You know, you want maybe those one-word prompts, but you're not trying to get the conversation down verbatim. It's not a lecture at university, right? Because it stilts the conversation. Okay. Anybody else have any advice for their fellows in the room on phone etiquette? Yes. Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's really unfortunate because so I would say they've had a bad experience. If they think of phone calls as being a bad experience, then we have to change their mind about that. I can't imagine them going through their professional life without having to deal with a telephone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Leah's waving her hand over here. The questions? Okay. Sorry. So the conversation we're having here is about people, and in particular young people who don't like to do business or chat on the phone. In some cases because they've had, they think the bad news comes via the phone. But really, it's just a different lifestyle, mindset. So what do we do to accommodate people who don't want to deal with us on the phone? I guess we have to find other ways of dealing with them, right? But how are we going to deepen a conversation with someone who just seemingly wants to tweet with us? Am I using the right terminology? Tweet? Tweet with us at 140 characters. Or text. So it's a lot of time and energy that is required. Okay, so I wish we could get into all of how the world is changing because of technology. But so we have to find some meaningful way for that individual to participate and be engaged with us. And they might appreciate a one-on-one kind of experience or being brought in an experience. I mean, I am very fortunate in my business because I'm in a children's organization. People like to come and hang out with kids. And it can be it's a really great experience for them. Not all of you will have that as an option. We have a question back here? Right. Absolutely, there's common courtesy at work. So the question is, how do you feel about asking for permission before starting the conversation and checking in to see that people have time and how much time they may have? That's an absolutely valid way to proceed. If, is now a good time to have this conversation? It definitely shows respect and courtesy for their time and how valuable it is. Question over here? Yes? Yeah. Right. Okay, we're getting some good advice here in the room about when you leave your telephone number, to leave it twice, and to use 0 instead of O, and not to run your numbers together like 7792 and all of that, so that people can because they're not going to hit rewind to hear the message again, not do repeat. You want them to get it right the first time, so make sure you're taking the time to leave the proper information. Yes?
One thing I learned when I worked in the call centers when I was younger is taking cues from what you could hear going on in the background. For example, if a baby's crying, if they sound out of breath, you could say, oh, you got some young ones there. How old are they? Get the kind of information going, say, oh, I have one that age, like that.
Right. So some more good advice is that typically you'll hear a lot of, you might hear noise or things going on in the background that you can, make part of the conversation. Now, if a baby, for example, if a baby is crying, you can say, oh, you have children, how many? But if the baby is, listen to the quality of the baby's voice, and if the baby is screaming, then chances are the person you're talking to on the phone will be distracted and may have to deal with that situation. So, again, but it's good advice. What is it that you can hear or see? You can tell when people are distracted. And, really make sure that you are being courteous about what their needs might be. All right, what slide are we on here? So we're moving on from the phone. Megan, how are we doing on time? Okay. So what we really want to do is get an in-person meeting, visit, tour, conversation going with people, right? We're working up through mail and phone. We're using mail and phone between the times that we are with people. But we really want to be face-to-face because that really does allow us to connect with people. So if you are in a first meeting with someone, let's take some advice from the dating world. How do you woo someone? Right? How do you find out about them? How do you figure out if you got a connection here? How do you find out what they know about the organization? Right? You're not going to interrogate them, but it's a lot of first date kind of principles. So, and you need to think about this before you go even to the first meeting. There will be an absence of information. We always think we can only strategize when we have a ton of information in front of us. 9 times out of 10, you will have very little information to go on, whether you're writing a letter, making a phone call, and face-to-face. If you're going to wait for all of that, to know all of the details, the call, the letter, the visit is never going to happen. You've got to jump into the deep end of the pool here, people, because the only way you're going to get it, the information you seek, is if you're actually talking to people, right? And they'll only give it to you if they feel really comfortable and that you're really listening and that you really care. So that's why we're having this conversation. So you want to anticipate their needs. What little thing that you can do that would be really thoughtful? You really need to listen when they're talking. You need to do as little talking as you possibly can. You want to be in a mode to prompt, not to feel like you're interrogating people. And then, you're making eye contact. But again, I was back to one of my original slides. You're listening with your ears. What are they saying? You're listening with your eyes. What's their body language like? Are they sort of receiving the information, getting more comfortable, right? The shoulders come down. The body sits back in the chair. They're not all curled up. When people are all curled up, they're not ready to receive anything you have to say. So until they open themselves up to it, they will not receive good information from you. So you have to keep the small talk going until their body language opens up. And of course, you're always listening to the heart, right? Because you're trying to figure out what is the emotional underpinnings of their needs and their wants and their desires. And I need to be able to connect with that. So I'm looking for those. You're making time for them. You're being yourself. Be interesting. Not just, you're representing the organization, so you're trying to look for all the ways the organization is unique and distinct and exciting things are going on, but you're a part of that, right? So you need to be interesting. So what is it that can, if the thing you have in common with the individual is the cause and the connection to the cause and your passion for the vision of the organization, what are you doing about that? Like, what do you do outside of work that demonstrates you really care about this? I care about clean air and clean water. What do you do in your personal life? Some of that you're going to share. You're going to share a little bit. Not a ton of stuff, because again, not about you, about the individual you're meeting with. But you've got to share some stuff if you expect stuff is going to be returned to you, right? I mean, no, the other thing, it says know when to sort of back off. One of your responsibilities, did I switch slides here? Am I on the wrong page? I'm sorry. I should be on that slide. But I'm actually on this slide. Okay. So I want to make sure, I've gone back to the slide that I stopped at. I want to make sure that I have covered this material. So it's the getting the face-to-face meeting. How do we do that? Everybody fusses about this. So typically when we're asking for a meeting, whether we're writing an email message or we're making a phone call about this, we're asking for way too much time. I mean, think about it. How many of you have an hour to spare this week? An hour? An hour? Anybody can squeeze in an hour? Somewhere? I mean, they may really seriously want to have a conversation with you, but nobody has an hour to give. They're going to be spending it in traffic, typically, what we're doing. All right? So ask for 15 minutes. Tell them you bring the coffee. Everybody in their day deserves to have a 15-minute break, right? Then that's the way you want to set it up. Yes, I deserve to take 15 minutes off. Get away, clear my head, spend time talking about a cause I really care about, and somebody else is going to bring the tea or the coffee or the juice. Make time for that. People also like choices, so if you're in a conversation with them, give them choices. Don't say, well, when can you meet? Don't leave it very broad or general. So, can I come to you? Can we meet at, and figure out what neighborhood they're in and find a place that makes sense where you can actually have a conversation and hear each other. Can we meet at Starbucks on the corner of Eglinton and Mount Pleasant? And if they're right across the street, you can they'll join you there. You can make those offers. Always offer if there's the opportunity that in your organization you can do a tour. People don't like to take you up on the offer like the first or second time around. And you know why? Because they don't think they're worthy or that they need it. I know the organization. I've been reading your stuff for 25 years. And yet they don't really know the organization. They remember the organization from when they connected to it 25 years ago. And they may not understand how it's changed. And you want to get them in the door, right? And you want them rubbing elbows with frontline staff and with clients. You want them to have this really engaging experience. So anybody under 40, they actually prefer that. That's what they want. We just have to figure out how to, get them to make time to do these things. So that's what they say they want. But most people over the age of 40, oh no, I don't want you to put you to all that trouble, is invariably the kind of response that you'll get. So make it easy for them to come in. I mean, that's really the ultimate experience. I mean, I know that if people come to visit the hospital, they're going to make a gift of some kind because they just feel that good being in our place. And they're really inspired, and they're going to do something. So that's what we're working towards. Also resist the temptation to say, oh, I have to take my boss, I have to take the president, I have to take the dean at my school, I've got to take a scientist, I've got what? Sometimes people will be really intimidated if the president showed up because they'd be worried about doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing or having to say no to the president. They can say no to you quite easily, right? So you are the relationship manager on behalf of the organization, and they want to start with you, right? Start broad and figure out how to get a little bit deeper. Okay, let's get back on track here. If it helps you get out of the mindset of thinking about qualifying, stewarding, cultivation, all of those steps, all of that tactical, right? If you're going to get personal, be in a space that's more about a courtship. The happily ever after for me, or the big event is like, a gift, but it's like a marriage. When you enter into a giving relationship with someone, you're tied to them for a very long time. You want them to give in perpetuity to your organization. So it's a big event. So what happens in the happily ever after? Sometimes we work really hard to get to the gift, And then there's like dead silence after the fact. Donors feel like, okay, you got my money and now I'm never going to hear from you again. So think about these distinct kind of parts and relationships that you have with people. Use your common sense. Be realistic about how much time you can spend with people. And you have to remain professional at all times. Okay? These people are donors to your organization. They are not your personal friends. You may really connect with them and that you may understand each other extremely well, but you are a professional and you must maintain that distance while still, being a good steward of that relationship. Not the confidant, and they're not your donor, my donor. Right? I have built this relationship. I got them to answer the phone. I got them in here to do the tour, and now they've made a gift, and it's mine, 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 mine. You are there on behalf of the organization. You're a facilitator. And in fact, the donor may stay with the organization for 25 years, but you may move on from that organization 5 or 7 years later. And then where will the organization be if you're gone? So make sure others, one of your jobs is to involve your colleagues in that relationship. However, again, being the professional, we do have these tools at our disposal. And you think about the different parts of the relationship and the different conversations you're going to have. And there are some specific things that you can do inside those conversations, right? Because you're moving it towards a gift, or you're stewarding a gift to get to the next gift. So, what does the qualifying kind of conversation look like? Here's some advice. Same with cultivation and same with stewardship. How many of you have the ability to do a virtual tour of your organization? Bring your iPad along to a meeting with a donor. Great. 1, 2, any more? All right. This is, a way that we're moving. And we have a fantastic virtual tour, for example, of the hospital. And I really do have to get into a position where I can take that virtual tour with me. Because embedded in the tour, you get to a particular place within our organization. And the virtual tour was built for the clients and the families. It wasn't built for the fundraisers. It was built by the hospital to help people find their way through the organization. But when you get there, there's testimonials from clients. There's testimonials from their parents. And it's a way to bring people close using technology. Body language in meetings is very important. I don't think many of us are really aware of what our bodies are doing when we're in conversations. So I'm not saying you have to videotape yourself, but be aware. Like, I still practice in front of a mirror. And I'm really consciously aware of the way the hook moves around the room, right? Because most often it's just a real big visual distraction, so I really need to minimize it. Sometimes I'm using it rather strategically. Interaction with people, you're looking directly at them. You're not getting into a stare that makes people uncomfortable, but you see a lot when you're really paying attention to people. Same with facial expressions. People are very expressive once you make that personal connection. And that really helps strategically, decisions you're going to make, questions you're going to ask, feeling comfortable with saying, it seems like you really care about this organization. Can we count on your support? Can we count on you continuing your support? What is it that you'd like to do? You're going to pick up on that by watching, rather than fussing about when is the right time, I got my question ready, and when is the right time to ask. I also find, and I am one of these individuals, I stop breathing when I'm with donors. I'm holding my breath. I don't know why. It makes it pretty hard for me to hold up my end of the conversation when I actually don't have enough air circulating. Right? So think about, are you breathing while you're having the conversation? It goes to the brain, and then you're thinking with greater clarity. So monitor your breathing. What's appropriate physical contact? Beyond the handshake, when do you hug? Who can you hug? In what circumstances? I went on a meeting one time with a client because I had been consulting for many years, and one of the gentlemen around the table, the board members interviewing me, said, "You're the consultant that hugs, aren't you?" Yes, I am. I am, right? But it has to be appropriate. It has to, feel right, all of that stuff. And I'll tell you something, I hugged nobody in the first, 5 or 6 or 7 years of my career because I wasn't comfortable enough and I wasn't confident enough. But it didn't mean that there weren't some people who just deserved to be hugged and needed to be hugged, right? Because it's part of that experience. And you will have those moments, and you have to treat them appropriately. Now, Megan's going to tell us about time. 20 minutes. So I'm just going to take a look here because we have a lot more slides. And what we're breaking down for you in some of these slides is how to be a great listener and how to engage in the conversation. The other great thing about meeting with donors one-on-one is it makes you a better writer. It makes you better on the phone, ultimately. The more practice you get, the more comfortable you are with it. And, of course, the greater the opportunity to create really good experiences for the donor. So you actually, these next slides are placed in this order on purpose. Right? So you should spend in any conversation 40% of your time or more listening. Listening carefully. In fact, in most conversations we have, we're really not paying attention 25% of the time. We think we're being completely present in the conversation, and we're only getting 3/4 of it, which means we're missing a bunch. And so how do you make sure you're hearing everything the donor is trying to tell you without you don't want to miss anything. You also don't want to steamroll over moments. I think we miss a lot of moments to connect because we're not listening and we're distracted. So there is a bit of advice here. The best advice I think I ever got on this topic, I worked with Native communities in Northern Ontario for 7 years. I showed up for 6 weeks to do 6 weeks of work, and I stayed 7 years. So I did a lot of listening in that time, and I had to learn, that's where I learned that skill, because I am stubborn, I am impatient, and I like to talk. And so listening came very difficult to me. And one day I was at a workshop about diabetes with Native elders, and one of the gentlemen who I knew very well said to me, "Tracey, there's a reason the Creator gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. That I should be listening twice as much as I am talking." And I got very quiet very quickly based on that very good advice that he gave me. And I heard and saw a lot of things that were important then to the work that I needed to do to help to raise the money for that program. So figure out how much listening you really do. Figure out your comfort level for the silences. Because we tend to want to fill a silence, but you really should wait about 6 seconds. So how long is 6 seconds? About that long. And that's a long time when you're sitting across from someone, you've asked the question, and typically they're thinking of, what do I want to say here? What's the answer? We shouldn't assume that, oh, now I've made them uncomfortable, and now I have to backtrack, and I have to fill this silence. So practice your comfort level with 6, 7 seconds, because you want to give people time to reply to you. And get comfortable waiting and being more patient. If you want to retain the information that people are sharing with you, visualize their words. Now, it's always best when somebody is a great storyteller, because you remember stories. Why do we remember stories? Because we can picture them, right? We typically picture them in our minds, and we retain the information better. Other advice I've received, because I started my career as a journalist and I wrote everything down, don't write. Your brain is an amazing part of your body. Everything goes in there. But if you've got all kinds of blocks, it's not going to get stored and filed in the right way. But if you trust that the information is going in there, when you need to recover that information, you will be able to access it easier. So you know that when you're in a face-to-face meeting with someone, you're not sitting there with your notepad taking notes. Because again, people are worried about what you're writing down, and so they're not going to be clear. They're not going to tell you the stuff that's underneath. So you're not taking notes. At the end of a conversation, if you've promised to send them something or do something for them, you might say, can I write down, what I need to do for you, like what I promised that I would send to you? And you can write it at that point. So what you're doing is you're taking in that information and trusting. Sometimes you run back to the car immediately and sit down and scribble everything down that you want to remember. Most of the stuff that you know, you can't do anything with that information anyway. You're not going to tell other people. You're not going to put it in Razor's Edge. It is going to help you figure out how to be a more active participant in that conversation with that donor. But it's not germane to that individual making a gift. It's just good information for you to know to be in a healthy relationship with them. So you may not need to write it down. We write way too many things down. And some of it we shouldn't have there. So if you're really listening, I can tell you that it will come back when it's needed most. This is the other part of it. It'll come back when you need it. Well, I got to remember this little detail. No, it'll be there when you need it. Any other advice about listening? Examples people have had? Yes? Participating. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Good. So a great example of the add one and ask one principle in a conversation. So you are, the person knows you've heard what they've said because you've added to that topic within the conversation. And then that gives you the leverage about asking something else to either continue to clarify your understanding of that conversation or to move the conversation on its way. So very good suggestion. So you're getting feedback and people know you're paying attention, right? They're not assuming you're kind of disconnected. All right. No, am I on the right slide here? So then the art of the conversation. So break down the conversation. So some technical sort of advice about this. A good conversation has 3 parts, right? You have the small talk. How many of you are constantly frustrated because you never get by the small talk part of the conversation? You're talking about the weather, you're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're talking about the traffic, you're talking about the holiday season coming up, and you're trying to get by that. But people need that time, right? It's that they need to feel like they're part of the conversation, and you're easing into it. So then, one of you has to express the purpose for the conversation. Like, why are we having this chat now? Remind me why we agreed that we were going to get together? Thanks, Megan. And then the final part of the conversation is, and this is your responsibility, right, is summing up what we talked about and kind of signing off. So again, remember I've said it's a continual, ongoing conversation. In some regard, you want to leave people satisfied, wanting more, so you're positioning kind of what's going to come next. It's always nice when you're going to go away and do something for that individual, so because it gives you the opportunity for the next part of the conversation. So make sure you take the time to sum up the conversation and remind the person you're meeting with, what it is that you're going to do for them, because they're more likely to have that second conversation with you. So you're always in a position in this job of sort of gathering and verifying information. Don't assume. That we get in trouble a lot of the time when we assume what people are saying. You can really clarify the information that you're looking for. So yes, you do want to go in with a kind, what is the information that I need out of this first conversation? If you've had a subsequent conversation, what didn't I get before that I kind of need now? It's a real block to my being able to sort of move on or see a next step or understand what's left to do. The biggest part about the conversation is to slow down. And most fundraisers I know are type A personalities, and we do everything at a high rate of speed and very intently. Right? And if we're meeting with someone who is also type A personality, that's okay, because the conversation looks like this. And we seem to understand each other. But the vast majority of our donors, they don't live that way. Right? They need thinking time. They need to process stuff. They don't have a lot to say at the first. But if we slow down, we will get a lot more out of individuals. What is the image that you are projecting? There's two things at play here. To get more personal, you have to be yourself. But to be the true representative of the organization, the professional, you have to model the personality of the organization. What's the personality of your organization? Do you know it? In what ways do you model that personality? Because at some point in time, that was a big part of why people got connected to that cause beyond the kind of vision. It was the people that were involved, right? So I really cared about so-and-so, and that's why I love Jane. I love Jane, and so I paid attention to her moving from the university to Wellwood and why she was going there. And it made a difference in our relationship, both our personal relationship and our professional relationship. I connected with Jane. That was my reason to sort of get involved and be a donor to Wellwood. So working hard to be present in that conversation. So we've had some discussion about this, and the listening, of course, we've talked about that. You can find almost any information that you require online about the art of conversation. I've gone and I've Googled a lot of this stuff, so while it's common sense, there are good tips all over the place. Something else that's very important is that you need to be yourself. You're not there to talk about the things that you think they want to hear, or the things that your president would say in this situation, or the chair of your board, or, you are. So sometimes you're telling stories. The stories you should be telling are your own experiences inside that organization, which means you have to go and have those experiences inside your own organization. And they should be things that happened last week, yesterday. I was walking home last night. They shouldn't be from like 2 years ago when you joined the organization. You found that story, and I keep telling that story over and over again. Right? People live in the present. They live in the moment. They live now. They know you are living the mission of your organization because you're telling a story from this week. You're trying not to dominate the conversation, and the best way to do that is when you are asked a question, practice your 40-second answer to that question. Because it can spin, you know a lot about your organization, so it can spin out of control pretty quickly, and you can just start talking and keep talking. So 40 seconds. Practice 40-second versions. If you're going to be dealing with media, you're doing 10-second versions. Okay? But your donors are not media, so again, 40 seconds is the right amount. The other great thing to tap into is people have an innate curiosity. And Canadians, generally, we're information-hungry beings. And we like to, so you can bring a wide range of topics to the table and to share with people. They certainly like stuff they hadn't heard before. Hopefully it'll be relatable to your organization and what it is about. But just, ultimately my advice to you is get out there and start having conversations with people. Practice at home, in the office, but, do your best to picking up the phone, having conversations with people, meeting with them, spending 15 minutes. You'll be top of mind. They'll feel good about the fact that the two of you are engaged in advancing the cause that you're involved in. And ultimately, you won't have to worry about whether you've met your financial objectives, either individually as an organization. If you have the right kind of activity going and the right conversations, the money will follow and you'll achieve your results. I think we're out of time. We have 5 minutes. We'll take some questions. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to start over there with Leah. I don't know if you have any questions, Leah. All right, so the question is, you have an annual donor, like a $500 a year donor, and it is difficult to get face-to-face meetings with them. In that case, hopefully, hopefully your organization has an annual donor reception. And I think a first meeting, so people aren't comfortable about maybe you coming to their home or maybe you going to them or meeting you somewhere, but they may come to the donor reception, and that's a good place for a kind of first meeting. There's comfort in numbers. Some people will be reluctant to go alone to the reception because they don't know if they'll just be standing in the corner with their, teacup and not having anybody to visit with. So in that regard, you would say, why don't you and a friend come to our donor reception? And then they're more likely to come. You can make that connection, and they can see that meeting with you would be a good idea. Anybody else have other advice about calls with the annual donors? Yes. So we have a colleague, and someone in the other room likes that answer a lot. So we have a colleague in the room who shared that practicing the conversation with people when you're walking the dog, when you're visiting with them, chatting with them in any circumstance, you're practicing your story. You're practicing your story on them. We have a question back here. Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, fabulous. So another piece of advice is that people who have been donors for a really long time and therefore have been receiving your marketing information for a long time, you can call them or write them and ask them if they would sort of review your materials and talk with you about them, give you feedback about what they like, they don't like. And this gentleman is saying it works a lot for him, so there's another piece of advice you can try. Okay, I think that people are getting ready to wrap up. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much, Tracey. That was really wonderful. And, I don't care if you're at the beginning stages of your career or you've been doing it for 20 years. It's really good to be reminded of all of this. It's easy to forget some of those really important donor communication tips. So thank you on behalf of AFP. A couple of very quick little announcements. Thank you. Please, if you'd be so kind as to fill out your session evaluations. I believe we have someone at the back who's going to grab those for us. Yep, hand waving, thank you. Those are really important in terms of both providing Tracey with feedback, but also AFP, and helping us always improve on what we're doing. And a reminder that the fundraising theatre tomorrow will be held in the John Bassett Theatre, and this is also where you can find breakfast. I believe it's on this floor. Yes, on this floor down at this end. Right. All right, so thank you again, Tracey. Wonderful.